News! Okay, we'll start with this. The recent fallout of Sky Nicholson's announcement that she will be facing Raven Chapman next and not Tiara Brown. An Instagram user reacted to the news by saying, "Dang, she ducked Tiara Brown big time," to which Sky responded, "She's getting it next. This fight was already agreed, and the WBC haven't ordered Tiara. I said I don't give a fuck which one's next. They're both getting it back to back. #watch." To which Tiara responded, "Who's getting it next? Girl, don't get it twisted because you're confident in your boyfriend protecting you. I'm not with the internet gangster BS. I'm about it for real."
A few thoughts.
I don't agree with all of this Sky Nicholson duck Tiara Brown talk because that implies that Raven Chapman is some kind of walk in the park or that Raven Chapman isn't a good fighter. As far as I'm concerned, those two opponent options were always interchangeable. Tiara or Raven, I like either fight. But maybe I like the Brown fight a little more because there's a lot more rancor between Sky and Tiara than there is with Sky and Raven. With Sky and Tiara, things are a lot less cordial and a lot more nasty. Tiara Brown said this girl is so freaking delusional, so confident in her man protecting her that she actually believes this BS. Punches can't cut through paper, yet she thinks she's going to magically do something to beat me. Man, boxing is crazy.
Is that what's going on? Is Eddie protecting Sky?
Here's another way to look at it. Tiara Brown, in her last fight, which was her 17th professional fight, fought a fighter that Sky fought in what was her 4th fight. Just her 4th fight as a professional.
What does that mean?
That means that how can you accuse Eddie Hearn of protecting Sky when you just fought a fighter that she fought several fights ago? She was only 3-0 going in. You were 16-0 going in.
You were a lot more experienced than Sky when you fought Gabriella Bouvier. So if Sky fighting fighters like Gabriella Bouvier means she's protected, what does that make you?
No, I don't agree with these comments that Sky Nicholson ducked Tiara Brown because I reiterate, that implies that Raven is some kind of walk in the park, some kind of lighter touch, and I don't think that's the case.
Let me be honest about something here. Tiara Brown has been calling out Sky Nicholson since before Sky became a champion. Tiara Brown has been calling out Sky since Sky only had a handful of fights.
Why would a fighter who's been around as long as Tiara be calling out a fighter who at that time only had a handful of fights and only was a professional boxer for a year?
Well, I understand it now, because Sky is a champion now, but she just became a champion. Tiara's been calling her out for longer than that.
Tiara Brown debuted as a professional the same year as Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields, way back there in 2016. Whereas Sky don't come into it until 2022, years later.
The people claiming that Sky is ducking Tiara likely don't know that.
All I'm saying is that I don't think it's fair to accuse Sky of ducking Tiara because she's fighting Raven. Raven is a good fighter too, and the people saying she's ducking Tiara, they likely don't know that or don't want to. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good agenda.
And what's the truth?
The truth is that the WBC didn't order the fight, and they were already working on the Chapman fight. That's the truth, and that's what it all boils down to.
I do get a little bit annoyed with these uninformed opinions, guys and gals who really aren't paying attention and weren't up until it was convenient to do so.
The truth is, I don't know if Sky's gonna beat Raven because I've always thought of Raven as stylistically a bad match for Sky Nicholson. She could lose, but if she wins...
Oh yeah, I'd definitely pick her to beat Tiara because Tiara's older and slower, and even if she's a good fighter, stylistically, Sky's not a good matchup for her. An outside mover, a pot shotter with long arms and long legs.
Speed.
It's not going to stand in one spot for your combinations.
With speed. For me, the Chapman fight might prove to be the more difficult fight of the two. That's why I was surprised when that's the one they ended up making.
It's a good fight. The Brown fight is a good fight too. I'm not hung up over which order they happen in, but being honest, I don't even know that Sky wins this fight.
Thus, the idea that Sky avoided Tiara for a fight with a fighter that might beat her in a fight that she might lose.
Come on.
It's a win-win for me the way I see it. It's a win-win because I'm actually more of a fan of Raven than I am of Sky. So if Raven wins, I'll be happy for Raven.
If Raven loses and Sky wins, I have Sky versus Tiara to look forward to. So it's a win-win.
We'll see what happens in October. In men's lightweight news, more details have been revealed about Shakur Stevenson's engagement with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. Shakur Stevenson's promotional deal with Eddie Hearn's Matchroom is a 2-fight deal, Hearn has revealed. First fight is Joe Cordina on October 12th, then the plan is for the second to be William Zepeda in February, with the hope of making the Gervonta Davis fight next summer. It's very optimistic, the whole thing, that William Zepeda will go through with it, that Gervonta Davis will go through with it. It's not that Shakur Stevenson is entertaining to watch, it's that he's effective at what he does. He can make somebody look bad, even if it makes him look bad in the process. A 2-fight deal. That allows Shakur Stevenson wiggle room. That's a limited engagement.
You do the Cordina fight, which is already done. Hopefully you get William after that.
If you get him or someone else, you're back to being a free agent. Free to go wherever you want to go to do what you want to do, whether it's with Top Rank or somebody else. And at worst, the Gervonta Davis fight is where it always has been, and that's nowhere, but you can hardly blame going to Matchroom for that.
I warmed up to the idea of Shakur going to Matchroom. I wasn't sure about it at first because I didn't think Eddie had the options for Shakur at 135 pounds. What changed my mind is Turkey's involvement. Because Turkey's working with everybody, Matchroom included, Golden Boy, Top Rank, Queensberry.
Boxer.
That's the game changer. Turkey's involvement, Turkey's money.
Matchroom by themselves, I wouldn't be sure about a move like that, but Matchroom and Turkey LL Sheik, that's different. Turkey can put a lot of fighters in a position to where we're going to find out who you really are, because money's not an issue and platforms aren't an issue. Not when everybody's working with everybody and he's paying for it.
We still don't know who it is Gervonta Davis is going to be fighting in his next fight, but rumor has it it's going to be Rayo Valenzuela. It's just a question of at what weight. 135 for Gervonta's title or at 140? For Rayo's, or will it be somewhere in between?
Rayo has to duplicate the performance that he just put on against Isaac. To stand any hope of winning, he's got to be the boxer, not the puncher. In the Isaac Cruz fight, you saw him trying to manage the distance, hanging back, setting up shots.
He wasn't as aggressive as he normally is. He wasn't as aggressive as he was with Chris Colbert. In that fight, Chris was the boxer and Rayo was the puncher. In the fight with Isaac, it was the opposite.
Credit to Rayo for being malleable, for being adaptable, because he adapted to his opponents.
Is Gervonta Davis versus Rayo Valenzuela a good fight?
In a manner of speaking, it is, but once again, it's just an alternative. It's just a substitute to the fight that people really want to see, and I think that's the Shakur Stevenson fight more than the Rayo fight. There isn't a grassroots demand, people clamoring for him to fight Rayo.
Rayo is not as well known as Shakur anyway.
So where two things can be true at the same time, yeah, Rayo's a decent fighter, he's decent, but that's not the fight that people are asking you for, and that's the way it's always been with Gervonta. When you wanted him to fight Lomachenko, he's fighting guys like Rolly. When you want him to fight Teofimo, he's fighting guys like Isaac. When you want him to fight Devin,
Barrios, Hector Luis Garcia.
Now that you want him to fight Shakur, he might fight Rayo. He doesn't really meet the demand of the paying public. The only time he did that was with Ryan Garcia, and it's because Ryan is more beatable.
Especially after you stuck all those weight clauses on him.
If he fights Rayo and he loses, man alive, that's going to be a disaster. Gervonta Davis is the last remnant,
relic,
of what was once the all-powerful, almighty PBC. Wilder, he's circling the drain. Errol Spence Jr., he bit the big one last year, and people don't even know if he's really going to come back this one.
The other guys, all the other guys they had, they're just outliers and fighters who stopped being relevant a long time ago. But Gervonta Davis, he's still out here. He's still unbeaten. And he's the last hope for many a Hamanite.
If he loses, those guys and gals would have a meltdown. A full-on Chernobyl.
Fukushima disaster.
Back to Shakur. So it's Joe Cordina, then William Zepeda. That's the plan. I think he beats Cordina. I think most people think he beats Cordina. The William Zepeda fight is the more interesting fight because of the contrasting styles.
And what usually happens when you mix volume punchers, aggressive ones, with pure boxers and pot shotters.
Yeah, usually that volume puncher's too busy for that pure boxer and they wear him out, they wear him down.
Usually, though not always, but usually.
Does that happen to Shakur? I really don't know because I haven't seen Shakur in there with a pressure fighter yet. No, Oscar Valdez is not a pressure fighter.
Not every Mexican fighter is a pressure fighter.
Haven't seen Shakur in there with a pressure fighter, a volume puncher, a persistent one like William across the 3 divisions that he's been a champion in. So I don't actually know that Shakur wins the William Zepeda fight.
I think that Oscar is averse to it. I don't think Oscar wants to make it. I don't think Oscar wants to roll the dice.
But that pertains to the business of boxing. There is the business of boxing, the politics, and then there is the sport of boxing, the science.
People can surprise you.
If Shakur Stevenson can't keep William out, and he can't keep him off, and he doesn't have enough pop, he can't get his respect.
He's not throwing enough within a round, or he's holding. He keeps holding and smothering.
Because he doesn't want to trade on the inside, so he ties the guy up, and he repeats this to the point to where maybe he's being deducted a point, or some points. Don't forget, he's not with Top Rank anymore.
You fight William, you're fighting him on neutral terrain now.
There is not that added layer of protection, which would make the fight that much more intriguing. I hope we get to see it.
That appears to be the plan.
Finally, in men's heavyweight news, you may have heard earlier this week that Flavio Wardley has joined Queensberry. Frank Warren and Queensberry are delighted to announce the signing of British Commonwealth WBO European and WBA Continental Heavyweight Champion Flavio Wardley to a multi-fight promotional agreement. The highly regarded, undefeated 29-year-old heavyweight from Ipswich joins the Queensberry ranks ahead of the much-anticipated rematch with Frazier Clark on the stacked undercard of Better Be vs. Bivol in Saudi, October 12th, as part of Riyadh's season, following their Fight of the Year contender back in March. The fight will be Wardley's second Riyadh season bout after he stopped his now Queensberry stablemate David Adelaide to defend his British title as chief support on the Battle of the Baddest, which opened the previous Riyadh season last year. Wardley then took on Olympic bronze medalist Frazier Clark, retaining his titles in a thrilling bout the judges ruled a draw. Flavio, at this stage in my career, aligning myself with the best promoter is crucial, and I couldn't be in better hands than with Frank and George. Seeing the massive fights and shows that Queensberry have put together over the past few years has me really excited about the future and what we can achieve together. Frank Warren stated, "The heavyweight division could not be more exciting at the moment, and Flavio has already shown himself to be a serious part of that with some real standout performances. Flavio understandably had a lot of offers on the table, and I could not be more pleased that he has chosen Queensberry to promote his career at such a pivotal time. He has a huge rematch in October, and once he comes through that, I truly believe he's ready to challenge anyone in the top 10. Flavio's manager, Michael Ofo, said, "It's fantastic to have Frank Warren and Queensberry on board promoting Flavio. Over the last few years, they have promoted nearly every single major heavyweight fight. We look forward to being involved in some massive nights with them over the coming years." So as it stands, Flavio Wardley has fought on the matchroom side of things, he's fought on the boxer side of things, now he's aligned himself with Queensberry. Why did he choose Queensberry over the aforementioned two?
Why didn't he go to boxer? Why didn't he go to matchroom?
I think the reason he went to Queensberry as opposed to matchroom is because Queensberry still focuses on a British audience, primarily a British audience, where Matchroom is a bit more global, that you won't get lost in the sauce at Queensberry the way you might at Matchroom, because Matchroom is doing so many shows all over the place, in the UK, the US, Australia, Mexico.
Spread across so many divisions, their attention is very much divided. They are more global than Queensberry.
So, if you're a heavyweight, moreover, if you're a British heavyweight, and you want to make your bones in the British boxing scene, appeal to that audience, that robust market, you might be better off at Queensberry than Matchroom. You might be better off at Queensberry than Boxer.
There's been a lot of talk about the future of Boxer at Sky Sports and whether or not Sky Sports will decide to renew when their deal is up, because the strength of Boxer's shows has been somewhat questionable.
I wonder that Flavio and his team didn't have that in mind when they made the decision to go to Queensberry instead of Boxer. on Sky Sports. Ultimately, I don't think it's a bad move for Flavio.
Frank, at least to the eye, does appear to be doing more British shows than Eddie is right now. Eddie's attention is spread across a wider region, whereas Frank, he's still more focused on the British boxing scene.
This is a fantastic signing for Frank, because now Frank has Moses Ituelma, Flavio Wardley, a foot in the door of the next generation of heavyweights. And things are not the way they were. They're not the way they were before, to where if a fighter signs to Queensberry, he may be so isolated from the other heavyweights that may be with other promotional outfits. No, things aren't like that anymore.
And you can thank Turkey El Sheikh for that, for bringing all the major promoters together to work together on massive cards. It's not a situation now to where if you sign to Queensberry, you won't have any access to matchroom fighters or vice versa.
But then why sign to Queensberry instead of matchroom?
Told you, it's because Frank is still more focused on the British boxing scene than Eddie is right now. Matchroom's gone global.
Previous video I talked about how the future of the heavyweight division is across the pond, is across the Atlantic Ocean. When you think about fighters like David Adelaide, Fabio Wardley, Moses Ituelma, Matchroom's own Johnny Fisher,
The future.
current state at the weight, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce.
Dillian White came back earlier this year. I'm hearing that Huey Fury is set to come back this year.
That the money, the real money for a heavyweight in today's heavyweight division, is across the pond. It's in the UK, so I more or less understand Flavio and his team's rationale going to Queensberry, that to me seems to be doing more shows in the UK right now than Matchroom is.
It's got to beat Frazier Clark.
Their first fight was a barn burner. It lived up to my expectations. Physically grueling and taxing. And this same year, they're running it back. I'm once again backing Flavio Wardley to win.
I think he can do better the second time out.
And I think the world will be his oyster after that, as there are other fights that can be made, like maybe Wardley versus Joyce.
Versus Chisora. Versus White.
Maybe Huey Fury, and that's just the domestic scene. What about Joseph Parker? What about Jarrell Miller? Maybe Richard Torres down the line if he can stay in the winner's bracket.
Glimpse of the future of the heavyweight division moving forward. Fabio Wardley is very much a part of that, but I reiterate, he's got to take care of business in October.
He's got to beat Frazier Clark. He's got to get to the other side of that fight.
There's a lot of money to be made, especially now.